stately, plump Buck Mulligan came from the stairhead, bearing a bowl of lather on which a mirror and a razor lay crossed. A yellow dressing gown, ungirdled, was sustained gently behind him by the mild morning air. He held the bowl aloft and intoned, Introibo al altare Dei. Halted, he peered down the dark, winding stairs and called up coarsely, Come up, Kinch, come up, you fearful Jesuit. Solemnly he came forward and mounted the round gun rest. He faced about and blessed gravely thrice the tower, the surrounding country, and the awaking mountains. Then, catching sight of Stephen Dedalus, he bent towards him and made rapid crosses in the air, gurgling in his throat and shaking his head. Stephen Dedalus, displeased and sleepy, leaned his arms on the top of the staircase and looked coldly at the shaking, gurgling face that blessed him, equine in its length, and at the light, untonsured hair, grained and hued like pale oak. Buck Mulligan peeped an instant under the mirror, and then covered the bowl smartly. Back to the barracks, he said sternly. He added in a preacher's tone, For this, O dearly beloved, is the genuine Christine, body and soul and blood and owns. Slow music, please. Shut your eyes, gents. One moment. A little trouble about those white corpuscles. Silence, all. He peered sideways up and gave a long, low whistle of call, then paused a while in rapt attention, even while white teeth glistening here and there with gold points. Chrysostomos. Two strong, shrill whistles answered through the calm. Thanks, old chap, he cried briskly. That will do nicely. Switch off the current, will you? He skipped off the gun rest and looked gravely at his watcher, gathering about his legs the loose folds of his gown. The plump shadowed face and sullen oval jowl recalled a prelate, patron of arts in the Middle Ages. A pleasant smile broke quietly over his lips. The mockery of it, he said gaily. Your absurd name, in ancient Greek. He pointed his finger in friendly jest and went over to the parapet, laughing to himself. Stephen Dedalus stepped up, following him wearily halfway, and sat down on the edge of the gun rest, watching him still as he propped his mirror on the parapet, dipped the brush in the bowl, and lathered cheeks and neck. Buck Mulligan's gay voice went on. My name is absurd, too. Malachi Mulligan, 2 dactyls. But it has a Hellenic ring, hasn't it? Tripping and sunny like the Buck himself. We must go to Athens. Will you come if I can get the aunt to fork out 20 quid? He laid the brush aside and, laughing with delight, cried, Will he come? The jejune Jesuit. Seizing, he began to shave with care. Tell me, Mulligan, Stephen said quietly. Yes, my love. How long is Haines going to stay in this tower? Buck Mulligan showed a shaven cheek over his right shoulder. God, isn't he dreadful? He said frankly. A ponderous Saxon. He thinks you're not a gentleman. God, these bloody English, bursting with money and indigestion. Because he comes from Oxford, you know, Dedalus. You have the real Oxford manner. He can't make you out. Oh, my name for you is the best. Kinch, the knife blade. He shaved wearily over his chin. He was raving all night about a Black Panther, Stephen said. Where is his gun case? A woeful lunatic, Mulligan said. Were you in a funk? I was, Stephen said with energy and growing fear. Out here in the dark with a man, I don't know, raving and moaning to himself about shooting a Black Panther. You saved men from drowning. I'm not a hero, however. If he stays on here, I am off. Buck Mulligan frowned at the lather on his razor blade. He hopped down from his perch and began to search his trouser pockets hastily. Scudder, he cried thickly. He came over to the gun rest and, thrusting a hand into Stephen's upper pocket, said, "Lend us a loan of your nose rag to wipe my razor." Stephen suffered him to pull out and hold up on show by its corner a dirty, crumpled handkerchief. Buck Mulligan wiped the razor blade neatly. Then, gazing over the handkerchief, he said, "The bard's nose rag. A new art color for our Irish poets. Snot green. You can almost taste it, can't you?" He mounted to the parapet again and gazed out over Dublin Bay, his fair oak-pale hair stirring slightly. "God," he said quietly, "isn't the sea what Algy calls it? A great sweet mother. The snot-green sea. The scrotum-tightening sea. Epi oinopa ponton. Ah, Daedalus, that Greeks. I must teach you. You must read them in the original. Thalata, Thalata. She is our great sweet mother. Come and look." Stephen stood up and went over to the parapet. Leaning on it, he looked down on the water and on the mailboat clearing the harbor mouth of Kingstown. "Our mighty mother," Buck Mulligan said. He turned abruptly his great searching eyes from the sea to Stephen's face. "The aunt thinks you killed your mother," he said. "That's why she won't let me have anything to do with you." "Someone killed her," Stephen said gloomily. "You could have knelt down, damn it, Kinch, when your dying mother asked you," Buck Mulligan said. "I'm Hyperborean as much as you. But to think of your mother begging you with her last breath to kneel down and pray for her, and you refuse. There is something sinister in you." He broke off and lathered again lightly his farther cheek. A tolerant smile curled his lips. "But a lovely mummer," he murmured to himself. "Kinch, the loveliest mummer of them all." He shaved evenly and with care, in silence, seriously. Stephen, an elbow rested on the jagged granite, leaned his palm against his brow and gazed at the fraying edge of his shiny black coat sleeve. Pain, that was not yet the pain of love, fretted his heart. Silently, in a dream, she had come to him after her death. Her wasted body within its loose brown grave clothes, giving off an odor of wax and rosewood. Her breath, that had bent upon him, mute, reproachful, a faint odor of wetted ashes. Across the threadbare cuffage, he saw the sea hailed as a great sweet mother by the well-fed voice beside him. The ring of bay and skyline held a dull green mass of liquid. A bowl of white china had stood beside her deathbed, holding the green sluggish bile, which she had torn up from her rotting liver by fits of loud groaning vomiting. Buck Mulligan wiped again his razor blade. "Ah, poor dog's body," he said in a kind voice. "I must give you a shirt and a few nose rags." "How are the second-hand breeks?" "They fit well enough," Stephen answered. Buck Mulligan attacked the hollow beneath his underlip. "The mockery of it," he said contentedly. "The second leg they should be. God knows what poxy-bowsy left them off. I have a lovely pair with the hair stripe gray. You'll look spiffing in them. I'm not joking, Kinch. You look damn well when you're dressed." "Thanks," Stephen said. "I can't wear them if they are gray." "He can't wear them," Buck Mulligan told his face in the mirror. "Etiquette is etiquette. He kills his mother, but he can't wear gray trousers." He folded his razor neatly and with stroking palps of fingers felt the smooth skin. Stephen turned his gaze from the sea and to the plump face with its smoke-blue mobile eyes. "That fellow I was with in the ship last night," said Buck Mulligan, "says you have GPI. He's up in Dotyville and Connolly Norman. Generic paralysis of the insane." He swept the mirror a half circle in the air to flash the tidings abroad in sunlight, now radiant on the sea. His curling, shaven lips laughed, and the edges of his white, glittering teeth. Laughter seized all his strong, well-knit trunk. "Look at yourself," he said, "you dreadful bard." Stephen bent forward and peered at the mirror held out to him, cleft by a crooked crack, hair on end. "As he and others see me, who chose this face for me, this dog's body to rid of vermin? It asks me too." "I pinched it out of the skivvy's room," Buck Mulligan said. "It does her all right. The aunt always keeps plain-looking servants for Malachi. Lead him not into temptation, and her name is Ursula." Laughing again, he brought the mirror away from Stephen's peering eyes. "The rage of Caliban at not seeing his face in a mirror," he said. "If Wilde were only alive to see you." Drawing back and pointing, Stephen said with bitterness, "It is the symbol of Irish art, the cracked looking-glass of a servant." Buck Mulligan suddenly linked his arm in Stephen's and walked with him round the tower, his razor and mirror clacking in the pocket where he had thrust them. "It's not fair to tease you like that, Kinch, is it?" he said kindly. "God knows you have more spirit than any of them. Parried again. He fears the lancet of my art as I fear that of his, the cold steel pen. Cracked looking-glass of a servant. Tell that to the oxy chap downstairs and touch him for a guinea. He's stinking with money and thinks you're not a gentleman. His old fellow made his tin by selling jalap to Zulus, or some bloody swindle or other. God, Kinch, if you and I could only work together, we might do something for the island. Hellenize it. Cranley's arm. His arm. And to think of your having to beg from these swine. I'm the only one that knows what you are. Why don't you trust me more? What have you up your nose against me? Is it Haynes? If he makes any noise here, I'll bring down Seymour and we'll give him a ragging worse than they gave Clive Kempthorpe." Young shouts of moneyed voices in Clive Kempthorpe's rooms. Pale faces, they hold their ribs with laughter, one clasping another. "Oh, I shall expire. Break the news to her gently, Aubrey. I shall die." With slit ribbons of his shirt whipping the air, he hops and hobbles round the table with trousers down at heels, chased by Edess of Magdalen with the tailor's shears. A scared calf's face gilded with marmalade. "I don't want to be debagged. Don't you play the giddy ox with me." Shouts from the open window startling evening in the quadrangle. A deaf gardener, aproned, masked with Matthew Arnold's face, pushes his mower on the somber lawn, watching narrowly the dancing motes of grass halms. "To ourselves. New paganism. Omphalos. Let him stay," Stephen said. "There's nothing wrong with him except at night." "Then what is it?" Buck Mulligan asked impatiently. "Cough it up. I'm quite frank with you. What have you against me now?" They halted, looking towards the blunt cape of Bray Head that lay on the water like the snout of a sleeping whale. Stephen freed his arm quietly. "Do you wish me to tell you?" he asked. "Yes, what is it?" Buck Mulligan answered. "I don't remember anything." He looked in Stephen's face as he spoke. A light wind passed his brow, fanning softly his hair, uncombed hair, and stirring silver points of anxiety in his eyes. Stephen, depressed by his own voice, said, "Do you remember the first day I went to your house after my mother's death?" Buck Mulligan frowned quickly and said, "What? Where? I can't remember anything. I remember only ideas and sensations." "Why? What happened in the name of God?" "You were making tea," Stephen said, "and I went across the landing to get more hot water. Your mother and some visitor came out of the drawing room. She asked you who was in your room." "Yes," Buck Mulligan said. "What did I say? I forget." "You said," Stephen answered, "Oh, it's only Daedalus, whose mother is beastly dead." A flush made him seem younger and more engaging rose to Buck Mulligan's cheek. "Did I say that?" he asked. "Well, what harm is that?" He shook his constraint from him nervously. "And what is death?" he asked. "Your mother's, or yours, or my own?" "You saw only your mother die. I see them pop off every day in the Mater in Richmond, and cut up into tripes in the dissecting room. It's a beastly thing and nothing else. It simply doesn't matter. You wouldn't kneel down to pray for your mother on her deathbed when she asked you. Why? Because you have the cursed Jesuit strain in you, only it's injected the wrong way. To me, it's all a mockery and beastly. Her cerebral lobes are not functioning. She calls the doctor Sir Peter Teazle and picks buttercups off the quilt. Humor her till it's over. You crossed her last wish in death, and yet you sulk with me because I don't whinge like some hired mute from Lalouette's. Absurd. I suppose I did say it. I didn't mean to offend the memory of your mother." He had spoken himself into boldness. Stephen, shielding the gaping wounds which the words had left in his heart, said very coldly, "I am not thinking of the offense to my mother." "Of what then?" Buck Mulligan asked. "Of the offense to me," Stephen answered. Buck Mulligan swung round on his heel. "Oh, an impossible person," he exclaimed. He walked off quickly round the parapet. Stephen stood at his post, gazing over the calm sea toward the headland. Sea and headland now grew dim. Pulses were beating in his eyes, veiling their sight, and he felt the fever of his cheeks. A voice within the tower called loudly, "Are you up there, Mulligan?" "I'm coming," Buck Mulligan answered. He turned toward Stephen and said, "Look at the sea. What does it care about offenses? Chuck Loyola, Kinch, and come on down. The Sassenach wants his morning rashers." His head halted again for a moment at the top of the staircase, level with the roof. "Don't mope over it all day," he said. "I'm inconsequent. Give up the moody brooding." His head vanished, but the drone of his descending voice boomed out over the stairhead. "And no more turn aside and brood upon love's bitter mystery, for Fergus rules the brazen cars." Wood shadows floated silently by through the morning peace from the stairhead seaward where he gazed. Inshore and farther out of the mirror of water whitens, spurned by light-shod hurrying feet. White breast of the dim sea, the twining stresses 2 by 2, a hand plucking the harp strings merging their twining chords, wave-white wedded words shimmering on the dim tide. A cloud began to cover the sun slowly, shadowing the bay in deeper green. It lay behind him, a bowl of bitter waters. Fergus' song. I sang it in the house, holding down the long dark chords. Her door was open. She wanted to hear my music. Silent with awe and pity, I went to her bedside. She was crying in her wretched bed. For those words, Stephen, love's bitter mystery. Where now? I think I'll stop there.